Chairperson, the Royal Hinds, fellow villagers, and friends of Buxton. I want to say to our visitors that you're in Africa. In case you were wondering, you're in Africa. We on this side of the Middle Passage never stop being Africans. When our foreparents figured out that they could not swim back to Africa, they turned the Americas into Africa. When the drums roll in unison, you know you're in Africa. And so, Africa has always called us, and we have always called Africa. The great African movement of the 20th century sought to connect us with Africa. And when in 1900 they held the first Pan-African conference in Manchester, England, the moving spirit behind that conference was Henry Sylvester Williams, a barrister at law from Trinidad and Tobago, our Caribbean. And when in 1944 they held the Great Pan-African Conference again in Manchester, England, a conference that sought to map the independence of Africa. One of the moving spirits was Rasti Macklin, who was born in this very village. He died in Kenya as an African. And when in the 1960s, a wonderful, beautiful soul from this village, this country, changed its name from Sidney King to Iyusi Kwayana, the black man of Guyana. He started an African cultural revolution that vibrated throughout this country and throughout the Caribbean. Many of us sitting here today are his disciples. In Buxton and in Guyana for our children to have African names. It's commonplace for our children to have African names. We have never stopped being African. We created our own African languages. We call it Creolese or Creole, but they are African languages. We created our own songs and our own dances. They were all African songs and African dances. We continue to be African 184 years after formal enslavement, and we are still Africans. And so we welcome you today as fellow travelers, fellow soldiers in the struggle for African dignity, in the continued struggle for African pride, in the continued struggle for African beauty. And when I talk about beauty, I'm not talking about the aesthetics. I'm talking about the beauty of the mind. The beauty of the mind. Because as Professor Nettleford of Jamaica said, we have not given this world skyscrapers and big, tall buildings. What we have given this world is our mind, the African mind. And that is why these small villages, these small islands of the Caribbean, these former outposts of enslavement could give the world the calypso. The calypso which came with us from West Africa. And we took it and turned it into a weapon of struggle here in the Caribbean. And as if that is not enough, when they brought the oil drums here during the Second World War to fuel their guns of war, we took those drums and turned them into the steel pan. We continue to be Africans. And then, as the 20th century waned, we saw in Kenya the Mau Mau rebels fighting with their native air, and we adopted it into our glorious Rastafari movement. We continue. And today, we came from Africa, as I said, with our African songs. And in the 20th century, the latter part, we turn those African songs into a unique song that we call reggae, and we give it back to Africa as our gift to you, our brothers and sisters, so you can now have high life in Africa, which is reggae. In the latter part of the 20th century, with the mad scramble for Africa, when our oppressors sat down somewhere in Europe and divided up Africa, it brought Africa and the diaspora together in one struggle against colonialism. We speak today not because we want to preach or we want to boast. We speak today to say that the resilience that we left Africa with, we have continued to use it. We have continued to demonstrate it. We have continued to use it to strengthen us so that we, together with you in Africa, to face the onslaught of the 21st century, that don't need islands no more, and apparently don't need Africa no more. But we say to them that when civilization was started, it started somewhere that they called Africa, and we are all Africans. When we were at school, they taught us that Greek civilization was the mother of all civilizations. But we, through our brothers and sisters, Walter Rodney, Chancellor Williams, Alvan van Sortima, we made them to know, as we would say in Guyana, that before the Greek civilization, they were African civilization. And it is no accident, because as you know better than us, that the first university was in a place called Africa. We give this world knowledge. As I said in church this morning, to kick off our emancipation observances, that one thing we are certain of, that we left Africa with dignity. We went through centuries of enslavement, and we came out of that enslavement with our dignity intact. When I say dignity, I mean pride, uprightness, pride. That when our foreparents, barely a couple of years out of enslavement, they pooled their little monies and they bought land, and they turned those lands into these villages, hundreds of them. And the first thing they did was to create their churches, and next to their churches they put their schools, and then they divided these lands in a democratic way. In the front of the villages, each family had a plot of land to live on. And in the back, the farmlands, each family had 2 plots. You can't get more democratic than that. We Africans are the original And then we use the knowledge that persevered for over 200 years. They never killed it. We created our economy. We created the markets, because, you see, we always imagined Africa. So when we came out of bondage, it was easy for us to create an economy and to plant and sell in the open marketplace. We are the pioneers of entrepreneurship in this country. That dignity means that you don't beg. Our foreparents never begged for a cent to buy these villages. They never begged for a cent to develop these villages. They never went to the bank to ask for a cent. In fact, after emancipation, when some of the slave masters went bankrupt, our foreparents loaned them money, the epitome of love. People who enslave you, brutalize you, you share your love with them. Humanity is the hallmark of the African. We don't have the monopoly on humanity, but we can write the script on what it is to be human, what it is to be human. These hallowed grounds. It was in this building, in another iteration, that in 1964, 48 years ago, E.U.C. Kwayana took up a collection here at Tipperary and made the first contribution from the English-speaking Caribbean to the freedom fighters. Our village, Buxton, did that in 1964 before any government began to do it. He visited several African countries in 1964. We welcome you full of our African identity. We welcome you full of everything that is wonderful of Africa. We have to fuse the Igbo with the Yoruba. We have to fuse the Fulani with the Aka, because we have to survive here, and that is why we use the word mati. It means mate. Once our foreparents got on that ship, what was common among them, it was not their tribe, but their skin color and their Africanness. So we are the coming together of all of Africa here in the diaspora. Brother and boy, you're speaking fluent Swahili. It was commonplace not too long ago to walk the streets in this village and say, I'm Jambo, si Jambo. And that there were 3 sisters, 3 students from this village who more than 40 years ago wrote Swahili at the GCE examination, the first in the African diaspora to do so, and they were from this small little village called Buxton. So, my brothers and sisters, on behalf of these beautiful people, these beautiful black African people, these beautiful survivors, the black survivors, I welcome you home. I welcome you home. I welcome you home because Africa was not always the physical Africa, but it was always the mental And so know that you are not just among friends. You're among brothers and sisters. You're among fellow travelers. One for all for one. And my generation, remember, in this village we had 2 lorries, they call them canters now. One was called Sir Abu Bakr, my generation. And the other was called Joe Kenyatta. Of Africa. They named their children, they named their modes of transportation after Africans. We love you in Africa because we love ourselves. We know that you have visited several parts of our beautiful country. But Brother Eric insisted that you come here. And he insisted that you come here for a special reason. Because as custodians of the African culture, as custodians of the African dignity, as custodians of the African identity, we here in Buxton continue always to nurture fairness over Africa. In steep rebellion, we also hold these fists and clench them tightly, because the Africa that we carry with across the Middle Passage is in there like a weapon in our hands. Wherever we go, we raise our fists and we say, black, oh, black is